Okay, I'm live on one. Now I got to pull up Zoom real quick. So start meeting and cross your fingers that this is working. You are using audio, start video. Oh, hey, there I am. Okay. I think I've figured this all out and everybody should be muted, right? Well, I can't hear you because, oh, sorry, now try it.
Oh, I was saying that the YouTube live wasn't playing.
Well,
now
I can't hear you because, oh, sorry, now try it. Okay.
Oh.
So, all right, I'm trying both of them. Hopefully this will work. So if it doesn't work, I'll just go ahead and apologize for it in advance, make sure that your mics are muted, and we're going to see what happens. If this is locking up in YouTube Live, then I'll just apologize in advance, or if it's locking up in Zoom, then I'll just apologize in advance. So basically, just wanted to try to do a little experiment for this because I know not everybody has Zoom, and then YouTube Live doesn't give us the same opportunities to be able to show cameras. So just wanted to kind of experiment with this a little bit and see what's going on. So basically what I wanted to do today is just take a little bit of time, 15, 20 minutes, and provide you guys with 3 different things. And first one is going to provide a bit of a conclusion to the Q&A series we've been doing over the past few weeks. Second is to tell you what the plans are for Genesis Boeing going forward. And third is to give you some updates from the surveys and answer a couple of your biggest questions. Plus any thoughts and questions that you guys might have. If you're on YouTube, which I'm looking over here because this is my other monitor, you guys can feel free to put that into the chat. If you put it in the comments, I'm not going to see it because of the way the YouTube Live works. But if you put it in the chat, I'll see it. Zoom, if you guys want to raise your hands, I think I figured out how to make that work. So hopefully I'll be able to see that and answer. If not, just wave at me or something and we'll get to you. I've got a couple of points where I'll take breaks and answer questions. So just feel free to chime in. So let's go ahead and start by wrapping up the Q&A series. And I really feel like this has been a good series for everybody, but it's also been really tough. And part of that is because the topics, they're super relevant for today with questions like, what do I do? How do I deal with my life when it feels out of control? How do I know what's true and what's a lie? How do I find joy in all things? But the crazy part is, you guys have to realize these questions came from you guys years ago. And that's because we're always dealing with the same things. People constantly feel like their life is becoming out of control in one area or another. That we're struggling with the fact that media causes us to confuse truth and lies and opinions. That we're dealing with a huge level of judging and shaming and guilting for our choices. That we're struggling with worry and anxiety and fear over one thing or another. And so the thoughts and questions don't ever seem to stop. So that's why I wanted to cover them now, because you probably noticed I never said COVID or never really said COVID in any of these videos. And that's because these discussions weren't about COVID. They're about our lives and the things that just keep happening. So whether you're looking at this video or those videos in 2020 or 2025 or 2030, I'm going to guess the topics are going to be relevant to you. And really, a couple of you guys were like, well, why don't you specifically just talk about COVID? Well, because COVID dates what's happening. And each of these topics are kind of eternal, no matter when we choose to watch or rewatch the topics. And today's topic really was, Jenny and I talked about this, really was the hardest because there's so much that becomes fuzzy in it. But ultimately, just like we as Christians, we need to know what we believe and why we believe it. So do those who believe in any other belief, Islam or Hindu or moral relativism. And so it's really not healthy for anyone to try to abide by their beliefs without knowing and digging into what they mean. That's what we do at church. That's what we do in small groups, because no one wants to be a hypocrite. No one grows up being like, or supports their beliefs thinking, hey, I want to be a hypocrite in this. No. So what we need to do is we need to know what other people believe and help them to understand kind of how that works out and whether or not they want to stand by those beliefs. And one of the things that has been really tough, and maybe you guys have, but at this point in my life, I've met a lot of people who say they believe in moral relativism, but I also have never met a person who has truly stuck by it. And really, the reason that I wanted to dig into that today is just because of how much it's happening with COVID and how perfect of an example it is. I mean, how much judging have you guys seen on, things going on to how different politicians are treating COVID? How much shaming have you seen of people who are either taking it way too light or way too serious than someone else thinks that they should be? How much bullying have you seen people behaving that they're not behaving the way that they should? I mean, really, COVID is the perfect storm to show the hypocrisy of moral relativism. Because if 60% of all Americans believe that every person has their absolute own truth, there shouldn't be any of this bullying, none of the judging, none of the shaming that exists. Because everyone should be 100% free and encouraged, not only just free, encouraged. Just like we encourage people to follow Christ, they should be encouraged to, in their right to either spread or stop COVID, in their right to love somebody or hate somebody, racism, sexism, et cetera, et cetera. They should be encouraged in their right, celebrated in their right to adore any political candidate, no matter what they believe. And that's the thing is, it should be praised by a moral relativist because it really is supporting the moral relativist belief system. But you probably noticed that's not exactly how we do it. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but from what I've seen as we reopen, we're down in Missouri right now, and we got to meet with a group, had a party for my niece, and that each of them who are working had their own story already of somebody coming in and going ballistic on them because of judging and shaming that they weren't behaving the way that another person thought that they should in the realm of COVID. And I mean, I know just talking to you guys, we've got a church of 80 and we've got 80 different opinions on if and how and when the church should reopen. So you multiply that times an entire country and it gets a little bit crazy. So we can already see how and when these reopenings are going to become very, very ugly. And one of the things we've been praying about in our Monday night prayer meetings at 7, you guys are obviously welcome to join. We've been talking about just praying that churches don't get ripped apart, because as I talk to pastors around the country, they're really struggling with the fact that people are coming in with some very different opinions, and it could turn into some Christians being very ugly. And really that brings me to our second point, which is going to be what's going on with Genesis Point and what's going on with the reopening. And I'm just going ahead, looking at chat. Nobody's waving at me. Nobody's on YouTube waving at me. So I think we're good. I think we can keep going. Again, if you guys have something, feel free to toss it in there. So that is the question that I get the most. What's going on with Genesis Point? When's the reopening? And it's been almost 2 months to the day that the school closed, and the elders made a video called The Plan, where we outlined the plan for Genesis Boyne during the COVID crisis. And if you missed it, I would just encourage you guys to go check that out for the full elders answer. It's really about 10, 15 minutes. It's a great watch to figure out where we've been over the past couple of months. But in that video, we asked you guys this question: what is church? And in the interim time, it's given us all the chance to examine what our thoughts and opinions on what church is. And in that video, I'm just going to go ahead and quote what Andy said. He said, "Church is not a building," which is good because you might not have noticed, but we don't have one. Church is also not a service. If church is only what we do on Sunday mornings, we're in a lot of trouble. Church is a family. It's a family that meets together, that loves and worships God, that cares for each other, and that cares for others. That's what church is. Church is not alone. Church is together. Church is not passive. Church is active. Church is not watching. It's doing. Church is continually and collectively loving God and loving others. So 2 months later, here we are. And as elders, we continue to stand by Andy's statement. We're still meeting together. We're still caring for each other. We're still doing it together. We're still being active, not passive. And if your life just revolved around Sunday morning, yeah, you probably are less happy. But that was never church to us. If your life is just watching church and not participating, you're probably less happy. But again, that was never and will never be church to us. However, if you're engaged in church, if you're engaged in being part of the family, assuming your internet works, then you're going to be doing okay. In fact, and from your most recent surveys, you guys said coming into this on a scale of 1 to 10, coming into 2019, you felt about an 8.6. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. An 8.6 in terms of being connected to and loved by Genesis Point. And now you're measuring about an 8.4, which is really, really encouraging. Been talking to a lot of other pastors and people have just been falling off a cliff with all of this isolation. But our numbers are saying we are equally connected, which is amazing and so encouraging. And I really believe that's because we built a structure where Sunday morning church is secondary to being a church family. Because a family isn't when you're in the building. It's when you're in each other's lives. That's what church is. And it's not an hour on Sundays. It's 7 days a week for us. I will fully admit I get a little bit exasperated when certain people send you a text or an email and are like, hey, when are we going to start having church again? Because I'm always like, when did we ever stop? And so you got to remember the plan from March. And the key was, and still is to this day, the church does not revolve around a program or a service or a day. It revolves around us. It revolves around the family following God. I'm going to go ahead and quote Andy again, where he said, we've said this 100 times before, but this is not Nathan's church. This is not the elders' church. This is our church. And we do this together or we don't do it at all. Andy was right that this revolves around us. It revolves around the family following God. So each of us is the barometer for what we're going to be doing and when we're going to be doing it. And I'm completely dead serious when I say we could open up in a few weeks if God was leading the family to support it. However, I can also say we haven't seen any indication that you guys are ready for a reopening. And I'm not just talking about words, oh, that'd be great, that'd be great. I'm talking about actions. And I want to take this back to what Bob said in our video in March. He said, each group is going to have two options of how they can meet: in person as normal and our new online feature. And here's how you choose what to do. Pray about it and do what God says. And that's still there for us, guys. Small group remains the center of everything we do. Small groups are the place where you form close family. They're the place where you get prayer and care. They're the place where you do outreach. So the first steps where we're looking for proof you're ready is in small groups. It's what we talked about a few months ago, and we're still standing by it. That you've always had the ability to pray about it and do what God says. So assuming that you've all been praying about it, we've all been praying about it, seeing as none of us have chosen yet to meet in person, it means we're not ready to meet corporately. Because if you're not willing to meet in a group of 8, you're not going to be willing to meet in a group of 80. And I realize that some of you guys may think, well, the groups of 8 are less safe because of social distancing. Let me assure you, I've talked to a lot of pastors. I've done a lot of research on this. And any of them will say you are far safer in a small group with less social distancing than a large group with more social distancing and some of the other factors that are going to come into being in a building together in that type of numbers. And I can say that each group, my guess would be, each group probably has 4 or 6 people who are ready to meet in person. And possibly the best way to gain momentum would be to reconfigure the groups to get those who want to meet in person and those who don't. I don't know. That's just a possible idea. But so far, none of the groups have been willing or felt led to necessarily take that particular step either, which again shows us we're not ready for Sundays yet. And Once we see that action from you guys, then we realize you're ready for the next step. Then we'll move on to what the next step means. So I was going to tell you what the next steps were, but I mean, let's work on the first steps first, and then we'll go from there. And we see you guys really engaging and wanting to, oh, awesome. Well, looks like we're already working our way there. So sorry, for those of you who are on Zoom, got one that said we've got 6 meeting in our house today. And that's the first steps, is getting people who are willing to meet together. So I'll real quick check. Got the comment on YouTube, not seeing anything on Zoom. So I will continue to move on. So as we wrap up, I do want to give you guys, like I said, once we cover those first steps, we will move on to the second steps. It'll probably be a 2-3 step process, but even when our elders met back in middle of March, this was the first step, to see us working in small numbers, then moving ourselves to larger numbers. One other thing that I will ask you guys to pray about, those of you who are watching, continue to pray for a place for us to meet once we get to that particular point. Obviously, the school is not going to be an option for the pretty distant future, and so we just need to continue to pray about where that is. But that is a couple of steps down the line, is finding that location. We've got a couple of different ideas. If you've got ideas, the tricky part is going to be finding a place that is willing to let a group of 50 or 100, potentially, depending on how things bounce back, meet together with all the things, because obviously that adds a layer of sanitation that they have to work through. But that is just something. Continue to pray for a place for Genesis Point. I know you guys have been praying for that for, I don't know, about 10 years now. So keep those prayers up. As we wrap up, I want to give you 2 insights into our church family right now and answer 2 of your biggest questions. The first one is spiritual health. I keep having people ask, how are we doing? How's everybody else doing? How's everybody else doing? And the data from the surveys came back. It was really encouraging, because it shows a strong suit of our church. Because on a scale of 1 to 10, again, 10 being the best, you said you were about a 7.6 coming into this year. And as of May 1st, you were a 7.7. So I realize that doesn't sound like a lot, but again, you're taking one step at a time. And where a lot of people have been falling away from their faith, or fall away from their faith in times of trouble, it's so encouraging to see that our church has been leaning into it, reading their Bibles more, praying more, meeting more together, praying together, just so many different ways that you guys are engaging God more. And it's been so cool to hear many of you guys sharing stories about how you've been able to continue engage 2020, that you keep sharing the hope that you have with others who are struggling. And it's been super amazing to hear some of those stories, and how we've been growing spiritually, just one step at a time. Another thing that you guys have asked recently is, how are the finances doing? And last year, you may remember that we entered May having spent about $15,000 more than we had made. We were in a bit of a hole. This year, with your faithfulness of supporting Genesis Point, we entered May having spent only about $4,000 more than we made. And as you guys probably remember, last year we were able to make up that $15,000 hole, get all the way back to zero, get back to zero. We got back by the end of the year having made as much as we had spent, as much as we had made. So, I mean, it was something. The second half of the year is always our big boon. And so to be this close is really encouraging. So, giving is a bit up, spending is a bit down. And part of that is a huge blessing that we have right now. We're the only church in town who doesn't have a building that we're paying for. So while that's kind of been a bit of let's just say a bit of a tension point, that we wish that was there. Now we're talking about where it's been a blessing over the past few months that we don't have an extra $1,500, $2,000 that we're having to spend in a place that we can't do anything with and continue to maintenance and stuff like that. So it's a blessing. The other thing that I will note is the next few months will be a better tell for where we're going to end up, because we, like the rest of Boyne, get a big summer boon through a lot of vacationers coming in and being generous for us and giving. And so don't know how that's going to work itself out, that July and August are our 2 huge months, and don't know how that's going to work out. So we'll have a better gauge on it rolling into about September as to where we are overall. But thank you guys so much for your generosity. Continue to pray for that, and continue to pray that we're just wise with what we do and how we do it. And as always, if you'd like to support, go to genesisboyne.com/give. Other couple of questions that you guys have wanted to know, I've heard quite a few different times. One of them is, why aren't we seeing the band play together? When will we see our band play together? And the answer for that one's actually pretty easy. That the band is made up of different families. And those different families want to social distance just as much as everybody else wants to social distance. And so, plus we don't have a space where they could meet together and be far enough apart. Because I'm not sure if you guys have done the research on singing, but it's not super pretty. And that is a huge thing a lot of pastors right now are discussing, is you can't really do so, even if you're social distancing and if you're having worship and you're singing, social distancing might as well be out the window if you're in a building. So that is something that we're going to have to consider, and every pastor is having to consider, is if you really want to keep people safe, we shouldn't have singing at all. But that's going to be a discussion we're going to have. As of now, though, the band doesn't want to meet together with the chance of spreading any more than any of the rest of you want to necessarily meet together and have the chance of spreading. Therefore, for singing, we're using videos from churches like Flatirons and Crossroads. Second, the other question that you guys really wanted to know was, why are services only 20 minutes? And the answer for that is mostly because right now, this has been like a one-man show. So, I mean, we've asked some of you guys, hey, would you send in, testimonies or different types of things? So far, haven't got any testimonies, haven't got any engaged stories, haven't really got any devotionals outside of Easter. We've had 1 music video and 2 kids videos, which we posted and highly appreciated, which means the whole thing has really been left up to me. And it takes, to make the quality that we're doing, it takes about an hour per minute for the Sunday videos at the quality we're doing, which means a 20-minute service takes me about 20 hours to write and edit, shoot, edit, download, upload, sideload, all the loads. And so really that is pushing me to my limits, considering I have other things that I'm doing throughout the week, like attending small groups and prayer meetings with pastors, and doing all the kids stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm really pushing it to get 20 to 25 minutes done. And if it makes you feel any better, for those of you guys who are like, I really wish that this was going to be an hour. A lot of churches right now are starting to make their services shorter because they've been looking at the data. And it's, fortunately for me, I'm a data person, so I'd figured this out quite a bit beforehand. But they've been looking at the data and finding out that their viewership plummets after 15 to 20 minutes. And that's because people's attention span is about 15 to 20 minutes, which makes sense because how long is a normal television show if you take out the commercials? It's about 20 minutes. And so while some of you guys might think that you want longer worship, the data clearly says otherwise. And a lot of churches are starting to condense, getting down from an hour 10 to an hour, and now getting into more like 40 minute spans. So that's kind of why we've been doing it that's why we've been doing about 20 minutes, is the data's there to support, and I'm stretched trying to get 20 minutes in, which is part of why we're down here. Is I came down to get a little bit of help from our family, and I'm excited about our next series. And I'm also really excited about some of the stuff that we've been doing with the kids. And I actually have kids now that I can do stuff with because my brother has kids. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun what we're looking to do with this next series. Let me check chats for questions. Thank you. I'm glad you guys have been really liking the kids videos. By the way, that is something that I do want to tell you. Last month I did the data on it. And we actually, it turned out, we had, if what you guys sent in for the surveys is accurate, we had about, I think it was like 80 people who watch a Sunday morning. So each house has like 2.2, something like that. So about 80 people watching the services or the worship on Sunday morning. But for the kids, we have 125 people watching it. So we have about 50% more people watching the kids than we do watching the adults. And so I was actually talking to my neighbor a couple of days ago, and I was telling her about it, and she's like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." And she said, "What's your demographic that your puppet shows are working towards?" And I was like, "I don't know, like 60?" And she thought I was joking, but I was not, because I know a lot of you guys, Bob and Vicky and Bob and Katie and Donna and Dave and Craig and Katie, it's just like so many, Matt and Nancy, like a lot of you guys are enjoying the puppet shows. We are enjoying the puppet shows too, except for this morning where we didn't have the monitor. So we had no clue where the puppets were. And we kept having, like, we couldn't read, because what I usually do is we have Jenny's monitor up here and then a monitor below so I can see what's going on. And we couldn't see what was going on, and we were having a hard time reading the script. So it was a little bit crazy. But plus we were playing with fire and scissors. So that was also fun. But anyway, the last thing that I do want to do is I want to give you guys a little bit of a teaser for our new series. It's going to be called How to Keep It Together When Life is Falling Apart. And it'll also bring a new format that Jenny and I have been working on that I am super excited about. And also, again, I will encourage you guys, continue to make videos if you want to make testimony videos, if you want to make your own videos of you guys singing. Jenny and I were driving down here and spent quite a bit of time just riding in the car with me and the ukulele and us singing, and maybe that'll make it online at some particular point. Keep making kids videos. If you're adults, dress up and make adult like worship videos, or videos of you guys acting out Bible stories for our acting out challenge. So just continue to find different ways. We would love for you guys to contribute. We've put every single thing up there. The most popular video that we have on the site, period, more than the sermons, more than Easter, more than anything, is Jeff and Jasmine's video playing Waymaker. And so it's just one of those things that caught on, and a lot of people have watched it. And that's because we like seeing each other. We like seeing the family. Like, you guys, I appreciate the fact that you think I'm peachy, but apparently it's time for service to start, because we're an hour behind. So yeah, I know you guys think I'm peachy, but you want to see each other. And the more that you see each other, every time a video comes up with one of the family, everybody's like, I love it. I want to see it. I mean, Jason, the one with Jason and Katie and Matt and Heidi that we posted this week is already just skyrocketing up there. It's because you guys love to see each other. You like me just fine, but you love to see each other. So I'm excited about next week's, and I just want to thank you guys for joining us today. I will check the questions one more time. I'm not sure if River has a question, or if that's no, apparently River does not have a question. That's just a hand raised for no apparent reason. Okay, cool. Hey, River. So thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll probably do another one of these in a couple of weeks once we get a few steps further, once we're kind of seeing where we're at in terms of small groups, meeting in person, and just kind of start to roll from there. So continue to pray for us, just praying for the building, praying for wisdom for our leadership. But I've been so excited and so proud of our elders, because I know I've talked to a lot of pastors, and they've just said it's been really hard continuing to make new plans and new plans and new plans and new plans and new plans. And our elders prayed about it in March, and we made a plan, and that plan we recorded. Again, I'd encourage you guys to watch it if you haven't seen it or if you've forgotten what they said. And it's still holding. I mean, it's still, through all the ups and all the downs, God laid a plan on their hearts, and it's been a good plan. It's been a solid plan, and it's been a plan that has lasted us all this time, and will continue to last us for a little bit longer while we build towards the next steps. So just want to continue to thank them, and thank you guys for being the family, for supporting Genesis Point and taking care of each other. So let's pray. God, I just want to thank you for our church, and I want to thank you for the unity that we have. And I just pray as different churches start meeting across the country, churches are meeting all around us here in Missouri, and different places. I pray that the churches have a unity. I pray that people are willing to give up of themselves and follow what they're called to do. I pray that they give up of themselves, that they're not judging, that they're not shaming, but that they're supporting each other, that they're encouraging each other. There's a fellowship, that you are giving unity to our church and the other churches in this nation. I pray for wisdom and leadership for our pastors, for our businessmen, for our politicians. I pray that each of them is able to follow you and do what you say. I pray for just the next steps for Genesis Boyne. When is it that you are going to call us to meet together corporately? Where are you going to call us to meet together corporately? But I also want to pray thank you that it's not all about Sunday mornings for us. It's about being a family and worshiping you. And we have these smaller units, these units that are biblical, of the early church meeting in groups of 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 and just worshiping together. That was the early church. And so when are we going to meet as a group of 50 or 80 or 100? We're already having the opportunity to have all these small churches. And I pray that we remember that. And I pray that we celebrate that community, celebrating going back to our biblical roots. And finally, I just want to pray that we follow you in everything that we do. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, yeah, I mean, thank you guys so much for joining. Again, Zoom is about 40 minutes, and I have taken up almost all of those 40 minutes. So, and we wanted to keep this at about 30 minutes. Apparently, I chatted a little bit longer than I thought that I would. But thank you guys so much for joining. And we will see you guys in a couple of weeks, and look forward to next week. And hi, River. So, and it seems like this worked well. Everybody seems like they could see everybody. So we may work into this a little bit more in the future. Use this as another potential opportunity. So again, thank you guys so much for being here. So great to see you. For those of you who I could see, so great for all you guys who are on the Facebook Live. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.